I've just started the recording, and maybe it's helpful just to kind of say a bit of an introduction about why we're doing this, who's here, and the kind of format that we've got lined up. Um, I mean, Stakeys, obviously, I got this idea from you. You were the one who originally came to me and said people are asking about more kind of opportunities to interact with the team, chances to like raise questions and discuss things. And Beefy as a project used to do these kind of calls, maybe like once a quarter or every so often a few years ago. Looking back in this channel, the last one was May 2023, so around the time we started our token migration process. And I think in general, like the industry moved away from doing a lot of these kind of calls, but they're still super valuable. And the last couple of months with the delisting from Binance, the buybacks proposal, and a lot of change going on, it's a helpful time to reconnect with the community, make ourselves available, and to be handling kind of their questions and topics of discussion that they want to talk about. So that was the kind of background behind hosting this call. Um, I guess we should just do some introduction so this recording can be kind of useful for people later on. So obviously I'm Jack and one of the key core contributors here at Beefy. And for most of the session today, I think we're going to be kind of running through questions and answers that I've solicited from people and been managing a bit of a list of. But then I've asked Stakius to join us and act as a bit of a moderator to ask questions. So now, Stakius, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so I'm Stakius. I've been a long-term participant in the project way before I was a moderator. I hold quite a bit of Beefy, though now the value is a bit less than it was a few years ago, but it was definitely a big part of my portfolio, and it made me very interested in the project. And I think I had a lot of chances to mess up with DeFi in general, and also some interactions with the Beefy dApp. And I think I quite well understand how the average user is feeling about, things that happen on chain and with us. And maybe I can be like a bit of a bridge between them and core, and maybe also in the format that we've set up, me asking you questions on behalf of users, this can shine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good to have a mix of different perspectives, given that the core team is often sort of so deep into what we're actually doing behind the scenes. It's helpful to have that kind of sort of more set apart viewpoint and more kind of down to earth with our traditional users. Um, and then I guess also along with us, we've got a few members of the core team. I don't know, maybe GPMS or DFID. You guys just want to say hey for the recording?
Yeah, my name is GPMS. I'm part of the BDB. I'm part of the Beefy BD team, uh, and yeah, exciting to be able to talk to the community. Uh, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And then yeah, a few other members of the core team are kind of around in the background, but maybe won't be speaking so much. Might drop in some messages. But we've got DFID and Ahmad and Pablo as well. Um, and yeah, I guess we can just dive straight into it if you're ready, Stakius, to just start kind of running through some of the questions that we've had from the community and giving some updates on what we're doing. And yeah, Chunky, thank you for dropping a question there. We'll try and pick up questions in the chat kind of as we're going through.
Yeah, sure. Let's start with an easy one. Somebody asked how many developers are working for Beefy, and I think this is a nice question because we don't only have really developers, we have basically core and strategists. So maybe you can say a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Beefy is interesting because we have so many different layers of kind of contributors. We have kind of full-time core people who are putting their all into this, and then we have people who are kind of contributing more loosely, maybe involved with some other projects. Some of them part of the core team, and some of them external to the core team as sort of strategists or other roles like moderators. So right now the core team has 16 members. I think about 14 of those are full-time, and of those probably about 9 or 10 are developers. So we're quite kind of developer heavy within the core team. Then beyond that, we have a further 3 additional moderators. A lot of the core team helps with moderation as well. and we have maybe like 4 or 5 different strategists who show up from time to time to contribute. So yeah, all told, Beefy stretches from about 20 to 25 people rotating their contributions.
Okay, cool. A little warm up. So we divided things in themes. I think this helps to, especially if people skip through the audio maybe to focus a bit on what we're talking about. So the first one is about the Beefy token itself. Should the DAO become the largest holder of the Beefy token, could big acquisitions create a flywheel, maybe upward pressure on the Beefy price? I think we by our recent announcement, we already said that we would be buying Beefy if it would go under fair market under the fair value. So I think we already put a little bit of a hint that we were going to do this, but this is a lot bigger. And what are your thoughts about that, Jack?
Yeah, we're definitely one of the largest holders of Beefy already. The amount oscillates constantly because quite a bit of it is deployed as liquidity. But I think last time we checked, it was around 6 to 7,000 Beefy, so getting close to 10% of supply being held in the treasury. Some of that is kind of non-circulating, so not really being put to any use, and some of it is in use as liquidity, or some other kind of minor use cases that we have. But yeah, in general, we already have quite a significant amount of Beefy, and the market hasn't really reacted to that fact significantly. There's not a lot of people who do the research on circulating supply and say, okay, well, there's 80k Beefy, but actually only, I don't know, 73k of it is actually circulating. So the problem I kind of have with this idea of why doesn't the DAO just keep buying more Beefy, big acquisitions, creating flywheels, creating supply pressure. I just think it relies on a lot of assumptions about how the market is going to react to those events. And the market is often so detached from the kind of underlying economics that we could spend so much of the treasury trying to acquire Beefy and end up in a position where holders don't really realize it, but they do see that our treasury number has gone down and wonder if their Beefy is worth less as a result. So it's a nice theory, but I think in practice it's not especially doable.
All right. I see that Chen Collaborator has a question that he asked. Do you mind answering it? I think it can be answered quickly, and then we can continue to the rest of the scripted part.
Yeah.
Well, scripted part that we documented.
Yes.
I can answer that one if you want.
Yeah.
Let's go. I'll ask the question. So for the audio people that don't see the text, they can
Cool.
listen to what's going on. So Chen Collaborator, also named, he asked, how do new pairs chains get added? Is there a requirement or conditions? Of course there are, and GPMS can tell us more about that.
So talking about the pairs and the type of bullets that we decide to launch, we usually focus primarily in the security of the token that we're going to offer to basically our community through our platform. So we focus a lot. I would say that's the most important part, the security that the chain or the pairs have. Also, we check the volume, we check the distribution, and obviously if they're offering any type of rewards or farms. In case of CLMs, which are concentrated liquidity manager, we also check the volume because it doesn't make sense for us to list a token that doesn't have like trading volume or a lot of users or a lot of activity throughout that specific pool. On the chain side, we like to work with ecosystems that have a strong DeFi foundations, I could say. And because obviously, as we know, Beefy is like a protocol that deploys on top of already existing DeFi infrastructure. It could be lending protocols, liquidity pools, DEXs, like as a whole. So it's obviously very important for us to have like a strong DeFi foundation so we can basically have a lot of products in that specific chain. Also, the TVL is very important, the DeFi TVL specifically. And yeah, actually we have like requirements for chain, like bridges, oracles, like a lot of interesting infrastructure that we need to deploy and be able to securely manage Beefy in it. But I would say the most important part is the DeFi infrastructure that the chain has.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe worth adding, Chunky, that pairs anyone can come and request, and we'll have a look and kind of give reasons if there are issues. Chains, people come forwards and ask us to launch on their chain all the time. We kind of keep those conditions a bit more withheld. But yeah, if you've got suggestions for pairs or chains, there's a Vaults request channel. Feel free to drop them in there. We'll pick them up and have a look.
Cool. Jack, I suggested we switch vision, strategy, and partnerships because we were already talking about partnerships, and we can continue maybe about that topic.
Yeah, great idea. Great idea.
Okay, cool. So these are for GPMS, so Jack can take a little tea break. What kind of partnerships does Beefy want to focus on going forward? So infrastructure partners, chains, protocols, wallets, maybe front ends or institutional platforms, or maybe even something completely different.
Oh, actually, I would say it's gonna sound a little cliche, but we like to focus on a lot of different angles that we could offer to our community and our partners. We have been integrating several wallets. From the top of my head, the latest one was Base. So we got integrated into Base Wallet as like inside the wallet to people to be able to use Beefy in that, and we take that like it's pretty important to us because it gives you a space to be able on the top of mind of the user. And we have worked with a lot of chains lately. We have worked with Monad, with Optimism, and different protocols. As the latest one was PancakeSwap. So I would think like obviously we want to focus on things that gives us the most revenue. Also thinking about the security that we are used to, the standard security that we are used to. But yeah, I would say like all kind of partnerships are good. We have been approached also by institutions, by protocol treasuries, and all those kind of things. So I would say like we're pretty much a protocol that has a lot of angles to be able to participate in a partnership with another chain or another protocol.
Okay, very cool. I think the next question maybe expands on what you're talking about now. In partnerships, what role does Beefy ideally want to occupy in the ecosystem, like a maybe neutral yield layer or a distribution partner, perhaps liquidity hub, or something bigger like a strategic ecosystem growth partner, whatever that means. Maybe you can explain me a bit and the people who are listening what that entails.
Sure. In that end, also I would say multiple. Basically, a neutral yield layer is what most of the people like have super present that we are, because we deploy on top of another protocols and basically auto compound the rewards. So our goal is to people to basically deposit their liquidity through us and kind of chill, be able to chill, and we basically auto compound the gains and just you don't have to be like on top of the screen like 24/7. Um, so that's in that part. As a distribution partner, we also have good avenues to do that. We have been in campaigns, as I mentioned in the past question, with Arbitrum in the past, with Monad, with Optimism, and with different protocols that we have been a distribution partner for rewards that they want to focus specifically on a pool or specifically like their community. We have what is called boost programs that I'm pretty sure all Beefy users know how it works. So that's a distribution layer that we also have and offer to our partners. Um, and yeah, as a liquidity hub, I would say we have been also a pretty important partner for protocols to deposit their protocols liquidity into the CLM, because it's basically maximizes the usage and the spread throughout the pool for people to be able to swap more optimized. So we have the infrastructure to be able to do a lot of things with with only one partner, and that is Beefy.
Okay, very complete. Do you have anything to add to that, Jack? Because I remember we spoke about this subject yesterday briefly, and you had another few interesting things that you mentioned,
Yeah,
especially about liquidity.
yeah, I think like people like to shepherd liquidity into kind of one or two categories. One is like a very kind of niche, specialized, kind of focused operator, provider, infrastructure layer for liquidity, and the other is being this very broad, very general kind of liquidity hub concept. Um, and so I think when people try and kind of shepherd us into those two groups, it breaks down a little bit because Beefy has 1,000 different strategies, dozens of chains, and so you look at us and you say, well, we're extremely broad, but actually like what Beefy is doing with that liquidity is quite specific and quite narrow, and yeah, people wanting to build out their liquidity come to Beefy as an option, often to complement kind of existing pool designs or lending markets, and we can do a lot of different things to help them. But we are not trying to be kind of a one-stop shop where we do everything. Instead, we're providing quite like a tailored specific service of liquidity management and compounding incentives. So I definitely think it's best to avoid kind of sticking too closely to these kind of labels, and expanding your view a bit with Beefy as something that does something very specific, but can do it in such a broad number of ways alongside our partners. Hopefully that's a useful insight.
Okay. The last question on this subject is: are there specific types of protocols or ecosystems Beefy believes in as especially synergistic for deep long-term collaboration?
Um,
Yes.
yeah, on the protocol side, obviously we have been in the past, and I would say is the same as now. DEXs and lending protocols are for sure or more long-term type of collaboration because we are a very easy and important part on basically getting a retail user that might not be so expert into I would say complicated, sometimes complicated protocols. On the ecosystem side, I would say we have currently a lot of chain partners. We are part of a lot of ecosystems. The last one would be Megaeth, which we were part of their terminal program, which was terminated in advance. But those type of partnership are the ones that make different ecosystem growth, and that's basically how Beefy can help to attract people to chains and to specific protocols. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah.
we kind of like evolved a bit, I'd say as well, like GPMS. Because like looking back at the last time we had one of these conversations in 2023, we had such like a broad range of chains. We were having dozens and dozens of chains, and every year we were focusing on integrating like 6 to 8 new chains. And that kind of multi-chain yield optimizer strategy has done really well for us and seen us a long way. But I would definitely say these days we have like much stronger, like deeper partnerships and integrations. Like a lot of the ecosystems that are coming to us and want us to build on them. We're thinking about, is there going to be like a proper incentive program here that like suits Beefy, or is this going to be something where we deploy and then nothing ever gets compounded and there's not really a huge amount to do on the chain. So things like Megareef are great because they're bringing a big token launch. They're wanting to actively kind of get people involved in different applications. But I think maybe we've evolved a bit since the early days of kind of, yeah, doing tons and tons of chains all the time.
Well, that's a good way to hark back to the one that we skipped, the theme, which was a vision strategy. You're connecting well to that. And the question here is, what's Beefy's long-term vision in the next DeFi cycle? Remaining primarily a yield optimizer, evolving into something broader, like an access layer for on-chain finance. This is for you, Jack.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of people still use this kind of just a yield optimizer like tag, and kind of mistake what we're doing now for being exactly the same as when we launched in 2020. Beefy's definitely kind of expanded over those years, and I would say we've kind of moved to add more kind of vertical integrations into what we do. So the biggest kind of example of that is our CLM products. Concentrated liquidity can be much more effective in terms of generating returns, but it requires very careful management. And we kind of sat back and observed a lot of different liquidity management protocols, and finally kind of came to the conclusion that we could do a great job of this ourselves, and it would dovetail well with our traditional kind of yield optimizer background. And over the past couple of years, concentrated liquidity has made up, if not the majority, then definitely a very large chunk of our total revenue. So that was definitely a step away from simple yield optimization towards kind of full stack liquidity management. And thinking about that as kind of like a vertical stack, you've got kind of compounding incentives on the top, you've got kind of managing liquidity in the middle layer. I think the next layer down of that would be hosting that liquidity, and that's something that Uniswap v4 really opens the door to. We haven't launched anything with Uniswap v4 as yet, but as with Uni v3 and concentrated liquidity, we're always kind of sat back watching. But definitely that kind of vertical model of expanding what we do is more of interest than something like the access layer for on-chain finance, which is a really, really broad term. It suggests that you're going to be stretched across the whole market, offering everything. I think I always think of it as if you don't stand for anything in particular, you're probably going to fall for everything. So we try and really make clear what we stand for and have a very kind of clear product identity.
Oh, I had an additional question on that. How is our CLM product currently doing versus other liquidity managed solutions from other platforms? Are we doing better? Is there any statistics on this? Are we improving the CLM product itself, evolving it?
Yeah, great question. We were actually looking at this in the past couple of weeks. I won't explain the full context of why, but looking at other automated liquidity managers in the market, the options aren't great. Very few people seem to have done it well. Very few of them have built up lasting traction. And a lot of them kind of spun out a product during the last cycle to support Uni v3, and then have kind of moved away from that now into something else. So we're really one of the very few that's made it stick to a high degree. And I think that's probably because of that integration vertically with our kind of existing yield optimization model. And then to the second part of your question, are we kind of improving things? Yeah, we are. We're looking at the moment a lot at kind of the statistics of the performance of our CLM products. We've been building out monitoring tools over the last couple of years to kind of observe how they work in action. And we've realized that there's definitely a kind of peak operating window for CLMs, certain types of pairs, certain types of situations, and then certain kind of configuration of those products. And we've gotten better at configuring them and being proactive with that. But there's still a way to go, I think, until we kind of reach optimal automated liquidity management kind of status. And we're going to keep pushing until we kind of get there.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next question. Related, how does Beefy evaluate new metas, narratives, and sectors in crypto? Which are currently the most interesting from a strategic perspective? I think this is an interesting question that I have myself as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many metas over the last 5 years of almost 6 years of our existence. I think if we'd jumped onto every single one, we would have blown up maybe 3 or 4 times already. Just thinking back, what have we had? Airdrops, we had point campaigns, launching your own kind of perp dexes, or leverage into your system. There's been so many more than that as well. But yeah, I think we don't go
NFTs.
chasing. Sorry, Steak.
Yeah, things like getting NFTs if you have certain tokens or investments. They're trying to basically it's a kind of fashion, right? Where we try to gamify crypto one way or another to keep people hooked. That's what the industry is trying to do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And no shame on that gamification. We definitely integrate with a lot of partners who are doing that. So like points, for example, we had at one stage dozens of different partners running points programs, and all of them were integrating Beefy users because we built that connection with them. But at the same time, that didn't tempt us to go and launch our own points program or change what we do. I think our view is kind of agnostic to trends and to new metas. We'll embrace them. We definitely want the economic activity that they create, but we're not going to change our kind of strategy to go and chase after something new and shiny when we think what we already have works in the right conditions. Um, so yeah, not a big chase of new narratives.
On that, where do you think the point meta is going? Do you think it's going to keep like its presence, or going to get less prominent, or maybe change a bit?
Yeah, I mean, we had a bit of a inflection point for existing narratives. I would say around the end of last year, there was a lot of emphasis on kind of safer, like traditional, simple DeFi products. But then the implosion of multiple kind of lending markets, from the Kelp hack, from the Resolve hack, from Stream, all of those kind of situations have changed that dynamic a lot. And I think people are being more cautious than ever and looking for options that are safer than ever. So we're definitely in 2026 leaning into kind of more safety around our products and better kind of risk management practices. But I think people have kind of lent away from the meta of 2025 as a result. And definitely we haven't seen a lot of kind of focus on things like points and NFTs and yeah, other kind of gamification. I'm sure it'll come back at some stage though.
Also, I think the stablecoin narrative began this year, but it's gonna be like a long way. We're also seeing like a lot of specialized stablecoin chains, I would say. Tempo, Arc, which is the Circle chain that still haven't launched, but is in track to launch this year. Are products that are going to focus on basically stable coins and yield and form of payments around, like different stable coins. So I think that should be a point of focus going forward. Um, Talking about that, we have been in conversation with Circle to launch in their new chain once it's live. So that's something that our users can expect, I would say, throughout this year.
Yeah.
This is dropping nice leaks. Awesome. Okay, and this the next question is for GPMS. I think how does Beefy decide which chains and ecosystems are strategically worth supporting long term, especially in a market with increasing fragmentation? Does Beefy see the future as truly multi-chain, or do you expect liquidity and users to consolidate around a smaller number of dominant ecosystems? I think they mean Ethereum. Can you answer that, GPMS?
Well, it's a lot of the same of what I just mentioned. In my opinion, the market is already has a lot of fragmentation. Like a lot of people, like back in the day, you had mainnet, which was Ethereum chain, and BNB chain, Binance chain. So it was like pretty like everyone who traded, launched tokens, and do whatever it was in one of those chains. Obviously, BNB chain came for like a solution for people who didn't have a lot of money to transact because Ethereum was um, pretty costly back in those days. Um, but now you have like 100 different chains, so it's a lot of fragmentation going on. Even us, we are live like in 28 chains right now. Each chain has their own community, their own focus. Um, so I would think the future is obviously multi-chain because it's already there. But I think like maybe each like protocols will have their own chain, like Hyperliquid did, that has like its own community, its own chain that revolves like around the main protocol. With other protocols, obviously supporting their token via DeFi activities like Hyper EVM, which we're also part of, and ARC, which I just mentioned. Like Circle, obviously is gonna focus on USDC in that specific chain. They'll have ARC token. So my guess is they will like build everything around obviously their own stablecoin and have protocols support their tokens by DeFi activities like lending, liquidity, form of payments, and those different things. So yes, I think it's gonna be multi-chain because it already is, but every chain will have like a specific focus on their community. And those ones who are like general chains, I don't think we need more than those.
Yeah, from a user perspective, it's also that the protocol is my access to chains. It's just a little tab. I click it, I can switch my chain, and I can, Beefy now with the V4 Zap, we can switch assets between chains. So we don't even feel the chain is there anymore. So I'm not an expert, I'm not a dev, but for me, a lot of the chains are interchangeable. Like if they have low gas fees and they're from a reliable project like Base or like a team, you can see who's on it, you can see who developed the chain and who funds it. I don't really care that much, and I think a lot of users might share that with me. So yeah, just a little add-on from my non-dev perspective. Let's go to risk management. Well, this is a hot one in 2026. How does Beefy think about the balance between high yield opportunities and potentially risky investments? Things like increasingly competitive DeFi scenes make high yields attractive, make high yields attract TVL, but at the same time, of course, we've learned that the risk is higher than you would expect in this phase of maturity of DeFi, in my opinion. This is for Jack. Yeah, this is for Jack.
Yeah, I think Beefy's been on a bit of a journey with this as well, same as the industry. Like in the early days, we had a lot of different people just loving the auto compounding technology and saying, we want this protocol, we want this token, and even people who would show up and do it themselves. And so we had such a variety of different things on Beefy, including crazy yields, including crazy assets, but also including kind of blue chips and classic ones as well. And over time, we kind of found that the former category, the kind of more wild side of what we had to offer, would really kind of ebb and flow and change over time, whereas the kind of blue chip side really holds steady. It might move from older product designs to new product designs, but you'll tend to find like some of the same names at the higher end in terms of our TVL share all throughout our history, and that's just the nature, I think, of our users. And users are consolidating now more than ever, I think, in those kind of blue chip assets and stable coins. But Beefy's not looking at that and saying, well, we need to kind of throw out like the old strategy entirely. We need to really cut down on the number of products. We really need to like focus in on just being safe and simple and stable and boring. We always focus on being safe, but we want to still be able to offer the full variety of kind of experiences to our users. And so when we're going to new chains, like Mega ETH recently, for example, obviously we were paying close attention to the big kind of pairs for stablecoins and blue chips kind of put together that are really important for liquidity on the chain. But we were also looking at kind of local projects setting up for the first time on the chain, deploying their own token, meme coins, and all of them kind of have a place still within Beefy. That's kind of our like overarching philosophy. But I think when it comes to kind of strategic importance, the biggest revenue drivers right now are what we're really focusing on, and they are quite specific. We're not spending a ton of time on lending protocols that are paying out, 3, 4, 5% on stables, or 1 to 3% on ETH, and nothing on Bitcoin. There's no kind of revenue there for us, just kind of TVL that's not doing a lot. So we'll offer those products and we'll maintain them. But then when we're thinking about developing new products or looking for more incentives, we're really trying to focus on the things that will generate alpha, additional yield beyond what you can get in the market. And that's our CLM product, but it's also things like specialized curve pools on Ethereum are really, really popular, and kind of aggregation layers on top of that. And then also going to these ecosystems like Monad and MegaETH and compounding their native tokens and their incentives as well. So still very broad, but definitely focused on what generates us revenue.
Okay. Next question. Nothing to add there. I think thanks. In the event of an exploit or a major hack, could Beefy integrate a panic bond trigger, like a circuit breaker, I guess? Would it be technically possible for the vault to protect users by automatically unwinding all positions?
Yeah, we had a question kind of similar to this recently, so I'll see if I can find the typed out answer that I wrote. And the first thing to say is that, like, whenever there is a reason to get out of a vault, to exit, we will panic it immediately. We will withdraw all of those funds back to the vault so that your users can withdraw, and we won't hesitate. If there's doubt there, we want to protect users' funds first and foremost. This question, I think, is more about those kind of interim situations or in between situations where we can't necessarily withdraw everything immediately, but there might be kind of actions that we can take. So that could be where markets don't have sufficient liquidity for a full withdrawal, but we could do a partial withdrawal. Or it could be situations where like new liquidity emerges over time and where they're trying to snipe it and pull it back. And my kind of general view on that is, sounds fantastic in theory, but the actual implementation of it is very technical. Each kind of protocol that we're dealing with has separate ways that they deal with things like liquidations and liquidity being returned. And so we would need to kind of design mechanisms to suit each of those behaviors. And what's more, we would need to operate them safely. So if you're conducting a partial withdrawal, you kind of need to be able to tell the protocol what you're withdrawing and how much you're expecting to get back for it. And a single mistake there could end up losing more money than just waiting to get the funds out. Now, I'm not saying that we would make mistakes, but what I will say is the more complexity we add to this process, the more likely it is that something can go awry and not happen like we want it to. Whereas our current mechanism of just panic as soon as there's any doubt, that has saved a ton of money over the years, and it's something that we stand very firmly by.
Right. I think it's also, if we use the panic function as we do now, it's a very black and white decision. You do or you do not panic. But if we have mechanisms that automate things, and those mechanisms withdraw funds once it's needed, and people lose money, then it's definitely our fault. Like we did something actively to make people lose money, and I think this also is a very tricky situation to deal with.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. And the number one thing with being safe is not making mistakes, and these things just open up the doors to mistakes.
All right. Next question. The insurance fund. Could we consider looking part of the treasury for a built-in insurance fund, something like the AVA umbrella program? I haven't heard about the AVA umbrella program. Maybe you can very briefly say what it is to contextualize the question.
Yeah, they have a module as part of their program where part of the funds are directed and users are incentivized to contribute. And then the idea is those funds are kept safely in case anything happens, and they can be distributed to cover losses. We saw a lot of discussion about this recently with the kelp hack, because the amount of losses far exceeded the umbrella. So everyone was kind of like, well, what was the point in that? We would just drain the umbrella and people wouldn't get it all back. And in the end, they ended up filling that hole in other means. And that, I think, kind of leads into our kind of view on insurance fund kind of products. Obviously, we had BSP 04 back in maybe February now or January, which was to explore introducing protocol-wide coverage together with Nexus Mutual. That was a slightly different proposal focused on working with an external partner, whereas I think what this question is getting at is Beefy basically offering its own insurance fund and its own insurance product from our treasury. I think it's kind of dangerous and not a great idea because our treasury is so much smaller than our total TVL. So if you agree to backstop a certain amount of loss, there's a pretty good chance that that total amount of loss could happen, within the course of the next year, 2 years. Particularly in situations where we, aren't actually the ones at fault, but there's something like a stablecoin blowing up, like we saw with Stream or Resolve, and our users are kind of left in between. And if we just drain that treasury as soon as that happens, we end up in a situation where the project can't really continue to fund itself and operate, and a few users walk away happier, but everybody else has to suffer for it. The great advantage with the Nexus proposal is that we don't underwrite that risk. We don't kind of bear that on our balance sheet. Instead, we pay out a bit of revenue every month, and we get a consistent rolling amount of coverage. And that coverage wouldn't cover all of our TVL, but there's a good chance that it would cover most of the individual kind of exploits that we might have some user exposure to, meaning that we don't kind of lose our whole financial future just because of one of those situations. But we do provide some level of recovery for users. So to be honest, I'm all in still on BSPO4. I think it's the right directional decision for us, but it's something where we need to have the time to implement it properly and the funding to implement it properly. And so for right now, it's still on pause. Yeah. Otherwise, for me, it's sadly a no to built-in insurance fund operated by Beefy.
Hey, would you personally be like up for making the optional insurance more prominent in the dApp? So people might need to, maybe a first-time visitor might need to select, I want to be offered insurance for every new vault I deploy in, or you think it's not necessary and we currently have enough exposure to the insurer in visually?
Well, I'd say that in terms of like our front end design, I'm definitely no kind of expert in this area, but I think our team does a fantastic job of keeping the front end extremely focused, extremely streamlined, easy to use, not annoying, and that has been, a consistent point of feedback we've had for years now since we introduced the V2 UI. And so I really think that like we need to be careful about leaning too far into kind of one particular thing that we want to change and changing the whole kind of UI to say to people, you've got to kind of click no, I don't want an insurance before you kind of access a Beefy product, or you have big pop-ups and banners everywhere about it. I think it could get to a point where it degrades the user experience for the common person, even though it's trying to help people ultimately. So we need to balance these things carefully. We can always kind of revisit it, but I would much rather see us focus the time on BSPO4, on bringing in a proper insurance fund, rather than just trying to make what we already have more prominent on the app.
I slightly misunderstood the current way and the new way the insurance fund will be implemented, hence my question. So you got that covered now, thanks. The next question is about the UI. You were talking about that and the work we're doing on that. So someone asked, cross-chain apps significantly improve UX. Does Beefy see simplifying DeFi UX in general as one of its biggest strategic advantages from here onward?
Maybe before we jump into this one, it's worth just dropping a bit of alpha. We've had an update merged overnight, which has enhanced the kind of range of our existing kind of cross-chains apps. I won't say a ton about it, but for anyone who's listening, it's worth checking the Beefy app and looking at how you can move around your positions at the moment, because this is evolving really rapidly. And yeah, we do see it as a big advantage that Beefy has and something that we do so much better than a lot of the industry. We see a lot of partners who are really struggling to create the kind of simple UX that Beefy has. But I wouldn't say that simplifying DeFi UX is like the biggest or like the only strategic advantage that Beefy has. We have a phenomenal brand. We have an incredible team, a network of partners, a community who really stands behind us in the good and in the bad. And we have a ton of kind of experience and expertise across the team, the contributors, and also the community. And when you stack all of those things together, we've created something that really kind of has stuck and has lasting power, where just having really fancy UX for a new project won't necessarily lead to all of those things. I'd say to do this well, you need to do a lot of small things really well consistently over a long period of time, and Beefy's done that. That's the secret sauce. That's our success.
Okay. There's another question here that's more or less related to this. Will Beefy consider streamlining the website by stacking similar assets, making it easier to use and elevate the experience?
Yeah, I mean, we've got like over 1,000 different rows of products on the UI at the moment, so it's a lot. And empathize with anyone who comes to the site and doesn't know anything about what they're looking for. It is a lot to kind of look through to make good decisions. We have had talks kind of internally about some things that we can do to consolidate, where there's two halves of the same product that could just go onto one page rather than two. That's kind of an easy win where we could shrink 100 lines off of the grid. But we've managed to retain a really kind of simple and intuitive feel, and I think a lot of the people who are really seasoned at using Beefy know that the real value of our UI is not scrolling through thousands of options, but it's the power of our kind of search, the power of our kind of navigational components that allow you to kind of quite easily move from one thing to another. So one example of that is we have kind of banners that appear whenever a product is being retired or removed from the UI, which will point to other options that are useful. So rather than just relying on the user to go back through and assess all of the 1,000 options again, we're always trying to help them get to that decision quicker through a really effective UI. But yeah, there's always work to be done there. So appreciate the feedback from the person who asked this question, and we'll definitely keep trying to streamline the UI and make it as simple and as easy to access as possible.
Yeah, and my personal feedback to that as a mod, as someone who helps people, I think the filters are amazing to simplify the interface to your wishes, and maybe not enough people use them to their fullest extent. The next question is, would Beefy consider moving back to listing only one vault on the website for the same pair to ensure the option available is the best? Whatever the best means, I think this changes every second, but yeah. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? It does change every second. But yeah, we used to, I think, have a much kind of stricter, more limited kind of set of options. So we would have hundreds of pairs for a protocol, but we'd try to avoid having the same pair repeated twice. And we still have that kind of as a general rule. But it's funny, we were debating this in the core team over the last few weeks as part of the kind of aerodrome migration process, because whenever a new project is launching, a new chain is launching, or there's some big event like a migration going on, you have lots of different new options popping up all the time with different yields, different rewards, different dynamics, and we have to make a choice. Either we go with one option that we think is best at the time, hope that we're right, and if we're wrong, then we need to reverse it later and try and ship people from one vault to another, or we can try and cast the net a bit wider and make sure that we are giving our users the full range of options, even though it becomes a bit more confusing. And in general, for the recent aerodrome migration, we tried to strike a bit of a balance by only doing two of the same pair at the same time to try and keep it quite focused. But you've got two new pairs coming in there. You've got an old pair that's being migrated, and then you have other options on other platforms as well. If you look at kind of ETH and USDC pairs on Base right now, you'll probably see about 8 different options that you can go into. So it is confusing, and we will also take that as feedback as well. But we always want to make sure we're offering the best opportunity as well as others that could be the best, rather than just making a decision for you.
Yeah, I think also for me personally, using Beefy and other platforms to deposit my funds, what is the best is also highly dependent on what I value. So is it pure API? Is it the CLM? Is it a V2? Is it a platform I feel like there's like a tingly sensation? I don't feel comfortable with the founders or the backing of the platform. So there's many factors that make something good for one person and less good for another. So I think us showing more options is still probably a better way.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Or you had more to add?
No, I think that sounds good. Let's carry on.
This is a good one. I've seen this one pass by on the Discord a few times. So how can we make Beefy more whale friendly? ZAP price impact was too high on large deposit, question mark.
Yeah, it's a good one. And yeah, obviously we don't like to hear that the ZAP price impact was too high. That's definitely something we're trying to limit wherever possible. Our ZAP works by aggregating a couple of different aggregators. So it's an aggregator of aggregators. And that means we're fetching quotes from 1inch at the same time that we're fetching from KyberSwap, and then presenting those to the user to make that best option available. But I think there are situations where liquidity is scarce, or where the options being presented by the aggregators isn't that great. And we always are on the side of caution in making sure that our numbers are correct, rather than offering some quote that seems too good to be true and should have probably not been offered because it doesn't kind of materialize. Switching to the kind of specific like whale side of this, Beefy's had a lot of whales using the platform throughout our history, and we love our whales much as we love our minnows. But I think when whales come to us and say, we want a discounted price because we're bringing a certain level of volume, or we want some kind of private access here that other people can't have, we take that on board. It's great that these people want to use us in this kind of way. But at the same time, we're really focused on building a scalable product that works the same across thousands of different people, and it can be upgraded simultaneously all at the same time. And the more we start to kind of split off into different branches of, here's a whale themed version, here's a kind of really small positions kind of version, the more complexity and the worse kind of user experience we're going to introduce for people. So in general, we'd always encourage our whales to come and talk to us, and we'll take your feedback on. But we're definitely not intending to try and segment Beefy into being more kind of whale friendly only. We want to make sure it does everything all at once, and appeals to all different kinds of users.
All right, good. The next theme is technology. Very broad. How is Beefy preparing for the next phase of Ethereum scalability and UX improvements, such as account abstraction and future rollup upgrades? I would also love to know that.
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, there's so many different kind of waves of innovation coming for our industry all at the same time. Beefy definitely is not trying to position ourselves as a leader in every kind of technological development. We're too small, and we're trying to be really good at what we do, not spread ourselves off across lots of different things. So just the kind of two examples we've got there. Scalability, things like upgrades to our rollups, making sure that we're kind of proactively taking advantage of bigger block space, or changes in the way that blocks are generated. We are constantly paying attention to these kinds of updates. We're needing to update the app to ensure that it operates in lines with the kind of parameters of these different chains, but we're really not trying to be well ahead of that and market ourselves as this, really focused on scalability product. Kind of the reverse. We want to make sure that Beefy is a consistent experience across all kinds of different chains. And so we're spending time looking at the chains that aren't scaling as fast or that have older technology, and trying to make sure that experience is consistent, rather than saying to everyone, you should move over to Monad and MegaETH because they've got sub-second block times and all of this amazing technology, and then leaving behind the people, who are still really focused on Ethereum or Binance Smart Chain, BNB chain, sorry. As for kind of UX improvements and account abstraction, things like that, some of these technologies are relevant to us. We do integrate lots of different kinds of wallets, for example, on the account abstraction side. And we want to make sure that we are continuing to offer access through the latest and greatest technologies, but at the same time they have no particular connection to the business model that we operate, the revenues that we generate. And so we're quite happy to let the latest kind of shiny thing go past, and instead wait for something that's really going to make the difference. And examples of things that kind of really do make the difference for us is things like upgrades to how liquidity pools work, the introduction of hooks for Uniswap v4 and Bounce v3, was a massive kind of step forward in how liquidity operates, and something that we were keen to kind of embrace and get to know immediately, and make part of our strategy. So yeah, we picked quite carefully.
Okay, thanks. What role does Beefy want to play in the broader DeFi infrastructure stack over the next few years? Like an aggregator, maybe a distribution layer, middleware, liquidity coordinator, or something else entirely?
I mean, I spoke a bit earlier about the kind of vertical stack that we're kind of operating, where we've moved down from just kind of focusing on compounding rewards to managing liquidity, and how there's kind of more layers to that. I guess that kind of direction is pointing towards kind of a full stack solution, where if you're launching, some new liquidity, or you're launching a new chain and you want to bootstrap things quickly, Beefy is a partner who can make things happen quickly and easily. In that sense, there's kind of a slightly more specialized and slightly sort of middleware kind of purpose to us. But at the same time, so many of these kind of different options that I mentioned there are kind of not exclusive with each other. So yes, we are an aggregator. We're always going to be focused on bringing together lots of different opportunities and presenting the best ones to our users. Yes, we're a distribution layer. We're really focused on trying to get the incentives from the programs to the users in the simplest and most effective kind of possible route. Yes, we're a liquidity coordinator. We work with partners who really want to bolster their liquidity on chains, and we explain kind of how to do that in accordance with our best practices and how to use our products to help them. But in terms of the kind of broad DeFi infrastructure stack, a lot of people really harp hard on how they are just infrastructure. They are the plumbing that makes the system work. And I would say that Beefy isn't really following that kind of line of marketing. We're not, we are infrastructure, but that's not our entire focus. And we do offer a product that's very close to the users and that a lot of users love and stick to. And so we wouldn't say to those users, we're just infrastructure, don't get too attached to us. You should use us in a very neutral fashion. Instead, we are quite happy to be an entry point for users to access all of DeFi, rather than just being part of an infrastructure stack.
Yeah, and as a moderator, I also want to add that as a moderator and user, that I think I've always seen Beefy as one of the more human places where you can interact with DeFi. So if you have a problem, you can come to our Discord, you can ask questions. The interface, the DApp is very friendly. It's not cryptic. It's making access to a very broad range of chains and protocols very easy. And I think this is maybe even more important to me than knowing what happens behind the scenes. This is something the devs are worried about, but not me as a user.
Yeah, and in an age when so many like DeFi projects are shutting off their Discords and cutting the user kind of out of the equation and just trying to kind of escape blame for things just by saying we're neutral infrastructure, I think Beefy stands out as one that still cares about community, still cares about having a human face. We're still creating these online spaces that people love to go to. We're still keeping great moderators who make the experience easy, and a lot of users love that and stick with us because of it. So I don't ever want us to rebrand ourselves as only DeFi infrastructure, nothing more. I think we always want to be a brand that people love and trust.
The diabolical opposite of this is institutional users, which is the next question that we have. With institutions increasingly entering crypto, does Beefy see itself eventually building products or infrastructure tailored towards these professional institutions, or not? What is our plan there?
Well, I mean, we should start by saying that we do have institutional users already. We go to conferences and have discussions with large institutions that say, yeah, we've had money in Beefy for years. This is a project that we think is great, and we're really keen to continue using. And they're not necessarily asking us to uproot what we do and make it entirely different. At the same time, there are kind of institutions that will require more kind of strict enforcement of specific kind of corporate requirements and compliance needs, and so you can have institutions that come to us and say, we'd love to have a private vault that's KYC with all of your team, and that's protected from threats using this kind of integration. And we'll look at it and we'll say, to be honest, we're not going to fundamentally change the way that we operate as a DAO and as a protocol to kind of meet those needs. So I would say that Beefy is fully open to institutional users, and we've seen the benefits of institutions entering crypto. We're glad to welcome them in, but at the same time, I don't think Beefy is going to rebrand into an institutional crypto brand at any stage. And I don't think we're going to be swayed off of our strategy just because there's a lot of interest in institutions at the moment. I kind of see it that if institutions are coming in and growing the pie, that's great, but the pie will trickle down and grow across all parts of this industry. And so we don't all need to just jump to institutional users only in order to benefit from that. We don't want to just follow the hype there.
Hey, that's a nice way to, I think, also to end today's open Q&A. I agree with you. I think that institutional users are also in it for the money, and although they bring money, they also expect money, and this might also create a lot of extra demands on the products that we deliver. And as you said, KYC is still something that makes DeFi different from the rest of the financial world, and why people are in crypto is maybe that's one of the reasons that people want to be here.
Yeah, they want something different completely. And we go through phases of what's cool and what's not cool. For a long time, TradFi was uncool. If you were the suit at the crypto conference, you would be the butt of the joke, and people wouldn't want to, be seen to be coming and doing business with you. And maybe that's changed a bit in the last 2 years. Maybe now, people are really wanting to be seen to be doing business with institutions and less interested in DAOs and DeFi projects. But who's to say that's not going to change again next month, next year, whenever? And like I said earlier, like if you don't stand for anything, it's so easy to fall. It's so easy to be misrepresented as something that you're not, and to lose focus on what you really want to achieve. And so Beefy, we're the same project that we've always been. We are focused on the great user experience for users of all varieties, of all skill levels, and we don't want to change that. So yeah, we're not going to jump on the institutional bandwagon anytime soon.
Okay. Hey, Stacker, I saw you write that you would join like maybe 2 hours ago, 1.5 hours ago, and welcome. We're ending the open Q&A, but we do have a very nice recording where you can listen back to the entire conversation.
Yeah, welcome, Stacker.
Welcome.
So it's pretty late here for me. I'm in the Asian time zone at the moment, so I'm gonna say goodbye to you guys. If you want to have a post Q&A drink together virtually, then knock yourself out. But I'm gonna see you the next time.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Stakis, for moderating. That's really appreciated. I'll kill the recording now so that we can just have a bit of casual chat afterwards. But yeah, I really appreciate your time and efforts and staying up so late for us.
Your pleasure. My pleasure. Bye-bye. See you guys.
See you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.